Hello, everyone. You're listening to Northern Flights, a Park Pro podcast keeping you up to date with the people, tournaments, and culture of disc golf in Canada and beyond. Consider becoming a patron today at patreon.com/parkpro. Find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Disc Golf Park. And now your hosts, Andre, Jesse, and Matt.
Hello, everyone. Hello. We are back. This is episode 7, I think. And as you can see, there's more than just Andre, Jesse, and Matt here. We have a very special guest today, Max Regitnig. Yay!
Good day, good sirs.
So this is going to be a pseudo co-hosting / guest interview. So we're very excited to have you on. For those that don't know who Max is, if you listen back to our first 5 episodes, we're talking about him pretty much every single episode. We're kind of fans. He went and toured down in the States all of last year. He's originally from Canada, and then went to the States, and then back to Canada, and then to Sweden. And now he's touring. So
it all checks out.
Oh, and he might be a good friend of Jesse's from when they were younger.
7 out of 10 friend, for sure.
Yeah. Cool. How you guys doing?
I'm doing good. Nothing too much new in my disc golf world we can talk about from last time. So I guess we'll pass it on to Matt before passing it on to Max. And oh boy, I'm going to mix those names up.
Nothing much new. It's been a beautiful, warm winter here in Edmonton, and I've not been taking advantage of that and going out disc golfing. So I really need to get on that.
Yeah, when you say beautiful, warm winter in Edmonton, it almost sounds like you're lying, so you better get out there if it is.
It's like -6. There is no better disc golf weather than -6. It's just warm enough that you can wear a sweater, but it's not so warm that the snow sticks to your disc when it goes in. Like, there's just like this perfect Goldilocks zone for winter disc golf, and it's been that the whole time.
Perfect.
Pretty exciting.
Max?
And I guess everything's new for me since this is my first time on. But having a good time back home for a long minute. Been in Sweden for the last 6 years, and then 1 year on tour in the States, and back in Invermere, seeing old buddies again. Seeing family, spent some nice time on the coast in Vancouver over the winter, over Christmas, and got some disc golf in at Raptors and Passive Park. Also played some courses out here that are pretty new, from what I understand, and I like what I see. Hopefully, you can get some growth in Invermere.
Yeah, it's a little bit different playing in the snow, but kind of get the idea. So,
well, I don't think there's any shortage of snow when you're on the coast either. You did travel down kind of in the worst weather they've had in the lower mainland in the last half decade.
Yeah, no, it was pretty brutal, but luckily warmed up pretty quick and melted and got some decent golf in, snow-free.
Not too swampy?
Not too swampy.
For our audio listeners, if you want to see Max's glorious beard, head over to youtube.com.
I've trimmed it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Kept it. I was just looking some pictures from like USDGC, and it was big and bushy back then.
Do you think it affects your
mobility?
Mobility.
Mobility and aerodynamics?
I don't know. Buoyancy, definitely. But
yeah. Cool.
That's too
well,
funny.
why don't we just hop right into this interview style? There's a lot of news to get to since we last had our podcast on there, but I feel like while we have you here, it's probably a good idea to get to know Max. So when did you start playing disc golf?
Yeah, so my dad started playing disc golf in like 01, 02. So definitely became like a family thing. I had my brother and my sister out there too. And at that point we were living in Invermere. Closest real disc golf course was Cranbrook at the college. So didn't get to play on baskets all that often. Just make trip out there every once in a while, but had some local courses, just throwing discs at trees, how it was back then. And yeah, kind of played it situationally growing up, more of just a family thing. And then we moved to New Jersey when I was 10, 11, if that works out. Yeah, 2005. And yeah, home course of Steve Brinster was like 40 minutes away. So that was our pseudo home course. Got into playing some tournaments there, got a PDGA number, and that's why it's so low from 2005. Most people, yeah, kind of have a double take at how low my PDGA number is, but luckily Dad took care of that at the right time. But yeah, then moved back to Invermere, and then yeah, kind of got back to playing it pretty casually through high school. Jesse and I and a couple other buddies played quite a bit here and there, but never just like constant throughout high school. And then kind of rekindled my disc golf interest when I moved to Sweden in 2016. It was a good way to make friends because I had no friends moving to Sweden. And yeah, I mean, courses out there were immaculate, and the tournament scene really surprised me because coming from Canada, there wasn't too heavy of a disc golf scene. So I could just kind of open my eyes to a whole new side of disc golf and started taking it more serious and really started to enjoy it a lot.
Awesome. And when you were in Invermere, you were playing with Jesse a lot?
Well, yeah, like Max said, it was kind of in spurts. I know, like at the beginning, when you came back from Jersey, you showed Hayden and I, and I think like Henry kind of played with us a couple times, and some other
there was definitely
guest stars popped in and out.
Some cameos.
But yeah, once we started playing a little bit on these tree courses, we made our own tree course that was closer to home, and there was one summer we probably played like 120 rounds that summer. And then, like I said, we grew up into other sports and things like that, less and less and less, but that is definitely the way it went down. And yeah, I mean, we built actually pretty good courses for 13, 14-year-olds just tromping around in the bush. So you learned a lot of good skills. And like Max said, it was a super treat when you could get out of town and play on some real baskets. So you begged a parent to drive you to Cranbrook, and then you went as early as you could, tried to bang out like 3 or 4 rounds that my near 30-year-old body won't handle anymore. But we just packed in as many holes as we could, made a day out of it, came home happy and tired.
Perfect. Cool. Why don't we fast forward a little bit? I know a lot of our listeners are probably more recent disc golfers, and especially being in Canada, I don't think a lot of them know what it's like being on tour. So why don't you take us through that process and maybe just begin by starting with like what made you want to go on tour? Were you playing lots over in Europe? Or?
Yeah, so once I kind of got back into disc golf in Sweden and saw the tournament scene, it definitely kind of introduced me to this other side of disc golf, and I was like, this is a pro sport, like this is legit. And then I mean I didn't even really follow the pro tour, or I mean I don't even know if the pro tour was around then. It was probably just starting like 2015, 2016. But yeah, just kind of got obsessed with it again and saw, I mean, the European tours are very prevalent as well. Sweden has 5, 6, 7, 8 tiers every year, so have their own national tour and Swedish championships, national championships. And then, of course, Finland and Estonia and Norway, they're all really deep in their tournament scene. And then it kind of just snowballed from there. I just wanted more and more and more. So played 2 full seasons on the Swedish tour, and then kind of started looking towards, coming over for the pro tour. And this was kind of bad timing with COVID. Planned on coming out in 2020. Played a few events in 2019. But 2020 was going to be my first year on tour, and then COVID put a stop to that. But just kind of waited it out and saw how the Disc Golf Pro Tour bounced back from being totally unsure of what they could do under those kind of restrictions, and then it slowly started ramping up. And then 2022 was kind of the first year that everything was open, and I was just like, let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. And feel free to jump in there, Matt, if you have any questions. I know it's a little bit weird with you being remote compared to us, but feel free to hop in whenever you want. You can interrupt me.
I'm curious what it was like on the Swedish tour, and what was the attitude right. I guess I'm looking at your 2019 statistics here. What was the attitude about going over and playing in the US? Was it seen as sort of this is where the big money is if you really want to compete at the highest level, or was it just like, oh, that's another tour and it's in the States? What was for the top players like yourself, what was the attitude about North American disc golf at the time before you left?
It was definitely two-sided. There's a lot of clout in Sweden for being a national champion and being a tour champion, but it was always like the top guys, if they're good enough, they're going to go play the American events. Like Henrik Johansson was one that was kind of my vintage, that he was back and forth between Sweden and the US playing pro tour events or national tour events, and USDGC, I'm sure he qualified for a few of those. And even before him, Källström, Lundmark, like there's a lot of Swedish legends that have had success in the States. But then again, I mean, it's not too often that there is that talent from Sweden. I think it comes in waves where there's a group of guys that just take it really serious, and they all kind of make the leap and say, we're going to play some US events, and then they just kind of gain traction there. But like when I was over there, a lot of people would be very content with just playing all the Swedish events, mix in some bigger Finnish or Norwegian events, and call it a year, and not really look at the US. And I mean, it's a pretty big commitment. Even if it is just for a couple weeks, just playing like one or two events, it's still, a big jump in, you never know what you're going to get. But I think everybody still holds the Pro Tour at the highest. Like, I don't think there's anybody saying this European Pro Tour is competing with the Disc Golf Pro Tour. Like, it's still in very early stages, and Europeans know if they want to make the biggest name for themselves, they're coming to the Pro Tour. You see Linus and Antala, and I mean, even before them, there's been a lot of Europeans that, Seppo, like, just have made a name for themselves in the US, and it doesn't compare to people who have even dominated the European scene, like Nicholas and Linus. They've been 10-30 rated players dominating the European scene, and most people wouldn't know their name from anybody else. So, but still a lot of promising things coming out of Europe, and I'm excited to see what they can accomplish this year, and in the future, if it is more of a, not a second tier tour, but an option for even Americans that want to do an extended stint in Europe.
Well, and that's what you're seeing with Paul Macbeth this year. Now his tour schedule, he'll be heading over to Europe for quite a few events. And I just wanted to go back to talking about Linus and Nicholas Antila and those guys. Are they more popular out there? Would you say they're more popular out there than some of the Americans are here? Or
I think it is kind of a special niche. Like, you see like Vaino Mäkelä's YouTube channel. Like, he has 50, 60,000 subscribers, and most of them are Finnish, because he does everything in Finnish. And it's like, how many Americans are sitting down watching a half an hour YouTube video purely in Finnish? Probably not too many. So it's impressive to see what kind of following they have. And I think Finland is a bit of an outlier. Like Sweden, Norway, Estonia, like, they do have substantial followings, but Finland is a whole nother monster. Like, just the kids there are super fans, just obsessive, and these guys are rock stars to them. Truly.
Cool. Would you say it's bigger than hockey in Finland?
I mean, I don't follow European hockey all that much, but just to see the passion that they have for disc golf, I would imagine it's comparable.
Yeah. Well, even just like, World Juniors comes by, and I feel like Finland always has passionate fans. I feel like they had the World Juniors in Finland not
This
too
was a
long
few
ago.
years ago.
Yeah.
I'd say the opposite. I feel like we're the only ones that care about the World Juniors here in Canada, personally. But to Max's point, like if you read the stats on Finland, I think it's the most courses per capita.
Iceland has technically beat them, but I mean it's just
'cause
such a
there's 8
small
people that live there.
small sample size.
Or maybe it's the most courses per square kilometer of country or something like that.
Something like that.
Something to that effect. And
But there was definitely a poll for like just popular sport, like what sport are people playing the most, like on a weekly basis, and disc golf is number one on
In
that
Finland.
poll, which
Wow.
is crazy.
Crazy.
yeah, that is kind of insane. And like you said, they view it differently than a lot of the world does. You
Yeah.
know, that's something that you train for when you're a kid.
I mean, you see baskets on all the school properties, like it's built into their curriculum, and it's like a staple in their sporting community.
Yeah, which is crazy because we battle so hard just to get one school to look at disc golf, and then they have you come one time and say, that was great. Maybe we'll think about doing this next year. It's never actually, like you said, built into the curriculum, part of the culture in the same way whatsoever. And do you know why that is? Like, is there like, because UC's great at marketing and Finland is his backyard, or?
I mean, I'm sure it plays a big part with the people involved and what kind of impact that they've been able to. I mean, it is a small sample size as well. I think it's less than half of Sweden's population. And I think just Finns in general do kind of have this sporting, kind of like the US, where they're just sport, fanatics, where they'll just support anything and everything. Like cornhole is on ESPN too.
Don't bring up the cornhole and how it's on ESPN and we're not.
And I think Finland kind of falls into that category where it really doesn't matter what sport it is. If a Finn is doing it, they love it. And I think just the Finnish success on success in a generous,
relative term.
Yeah.
But I mean, just having more Finns on the Pro Tour than any other European country is an impact that this, Finnish.
They like to support their country, and they have role models that puts more people in. I get where you're going to. No, I agree. If you have someone to look up to, you have somebody to chase, you got something to shoot for, it makes it a lot easier to keep pushing.
I'm curious about the Swedish tour. So Sweden, I was there. I played some disc golf over there. It's a bigger country than I was expecting. When you look at it on a map, it doesn't look that big. But the drive from Malmo up to Stockholm is no joke. Were there a lot of people that were really like? Would you consider touring and hitting up all the events? How organized was this? Was it similar to Canada, where you get the same people playing regional events, and then you'll see maybe a half dozen, 10 people at a number of events over and over again, but it's not necessarily organized as a tour yet. What was the sort of nature of the Swedish tour?
No, I mean, I was really impressed with how put together it was from the beginning. The first year I was there, I just didn't really know much and just kind of played the local stuff. But once I played a national tour and played multiple national tours in a year, like there is a proper touring community. And I mean, obviously it's maybe 6 or 7 big tournaments a year that all the big guys are going to. And they rotate events a lot. So it's never the same venue for every national tour. Or Swedish championships is almost every year in a new spot. But tons of overlap with who's playing all the events. And I mean, not that there was a huge payout for the tour champion, but there was definitely a prize ceremony in the final national tour event. There was a big presentation of the tour tournament champion and the tour champion. So it was a big thing for kids, and even the MP40, the MP50. There's tons of just old legends that just are really good in Sweden, and it's just amazing to see how close that community is and how dedicated they are to touring every year. They all take their 6 weeks vacation and dedicate it to all these disc golf weekends so they can play the national tour.
What do you think it would take to get? From what you're saying here, it seems like Canada itself is maybe a step behind that. What do you think it'll take to get Canada to sort of that level of commitment? Is it, and maybe this is just the distance plays a huge part in that. But what about that? The passion, the will to go to all these events, and getting all these quote unquote legends out, kind of thing. Because Canada has its own legends.
Sure.
But you don't see them as often.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too knowledgeable about of how the tours and how the tournaments play out, how many people are playing what tournaments, and I would imagine it is a lot just travel. Like, it's just, you can't go coast to coast every year, and then just quality of courses. I'm sure there are enough courses to go around to make 5-6 stops on a organized tour, but yeah, it's just a lot of logistics, and I think it's a lot of like growing pains figuring it out and just drawing numbers. I don't know how big the touring community would be from Canada. There's obviously pockets that are very dedicated and passionate about the sport and do a lot in their communities, but it's another thing to commit to traveling. I mean, 20, 30, 40 hours to drive. And then I'm sure at that point you might have to think, is flying worth it? Renting a car.
Well, yeah. For someone who has considered playing every A tier in the country, myself, it's the cost of travel and the time to deal with it. If I want to go to something in Ontario, it's a 42-hour drive in a vehicle that's going to cost me $1,200 in gas, or I'm going to take a $1,500 flight. It's just not as sustainable. And even if it was, like, public transit situations and things like that in Canada are so far behind places like Europe, I'm sure you can hop a train
for sure
and go to most of your stops at a fairly affordable rate.
And then it was like all these little towns have these disc golf communities that everybody's planning these tournaments with. So you're carpooling, getting a big Airbnb for 12 people, all from your town. And there's just, it's almost like a team aspect of it where it makes everything easier. The travel, the accommodation, it just makes sense. Where here it's like, you might know a couple people around you, but there's not enough people who are willing to take a whole weekend and commit to a tournament 2, 3, 4 times a year.
I'd say we have it a little bit, but like you said, it's pockets. Like, there's a great group in the Lower Mainland. There's a great group in Kamloops, and there's a great group here in the East Kootenay. And each of those is 5 hours apart by car. It's not like you're picking up a buddy every half hour and then going somewhere. It's make a concerted effort to meet somewhere maybe. And then, like you said, when you factor in all those extra costs,
it's tough.
Yeah. Like, 3 of the 12 people actually go by the end of it. Or you all go to nationals and then only 2 people go to each of the A tiers. It's we've got a bunch of little great pockets. We just need to find a way to connect them.
Going back to your tour last year, how did you do it? Did you do it in a van?
Yeah, so me and another Swede, kind of early on, decided we would do it together. We bought an RV, and I drove it from Victoria on Vancouver Island down to Waco and met him there. So it was like, I don't even remember, probably 40 hours alone in a 40-foot RV. First time driving something that size, so that was pretty stressful. But I mean, it worked out really well. Didn't have many logistical issues. Maybe a little planning, like just responsibilities, working out, sleeping schedules, training schedules, and even just kind of other people kind of hopping on, hopping off. If somebody was in need of a place to sleep, we obviously had a little bit of room to spare. So yeah, it was kind of a communal tour bus, if you could say that. But no, it worked out really well. Linus and I are still friends, so we got through it. But no, it was a lot of fun.
Cool. And is that the plan for this coming year too?
Pretty close. Downsizing, doing something more. Yeah, I can do my own, like a camper van or something of that sort. Makes the planning a little easier. I don't have to take into account 3-4 other people's training schedules or sleeping schedules. Can kind of focus on myself, and I think that'll play to my benefit.
Cool. And what was the day-to-day life like? So essentially you play a tournament and then you'd have to leave the next day to get to the next one and practice. And
I mean, it's definitely up to what you value. If you want to get to the course as quick as possible, sometimes we're driving 20-30 hours, so that makes it hard. You might have to split it up by 2 or 3 days. Luckily I had another capable driver, so we could split it up a little bit there. But I mean, practice schedules, everybody's different. Some people just want to do like 1 or 2 rounds, don't want to have to think about it too much. Other people want to do 2 rounds a day, get as much golf on the property as possible. I kind of fit in the middle there. I wasn't too worried about playing as many holes of golf as I could, but prioritizing the time, getting the travel, it does get a little stressful at times, especially when it's bad weather or just a long drive. It's a lot to think about, and you don't want things to go wrong, so you're driving cautiously and maybe not driving through the night, where maybe you are more comfortable doing that in a SUV or a small car. But big RV, you never know what can go wrong. So we were definitely cautious there. But I mean, if it's a back-to-back weekend, you have Monday to travel, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday to practice, and the tournament usually starts on Friday. So it's pretty tight, especially acclimating to even weather. I mean, at the start of the season, the Texas swing was cold, windy, and miserable. And then you'll go to Georgia and it's 25, 30 degrees and beautiful weather. And then back to Jonesboro, where it was cold and windy again. So it was a lot of you're basically going to new countries every week. Different climates, different altitudes, different courses. I mean, the style of courses was pretty jarring as well. Like just the Texas style, big open courses, battle the elements, very windy. And then go to W.R. Jackson in Georgia and play a nice wooded course. And just like the balance between golf courses and woods courses, it was a challenge, but a challenge that I was definitely happy to take on.
Cool.
So your first couple of events, 67th, 57th, and then Texas States, you had your first cash. How rewarding was that feeling to have your first cash on the Pro Tour?
It was nice, but honestly, from the get-go, Waco, like never played in wind like that in my life. And it was like freezing. So we were, and I mean, I didn't really have like winter clothes with me, thinking I'd be in, the States for the whole summer, but definitely could have used some proper winter gloves and a winter jacket because it was cold, windy, and I remember Belton being pretty windy as well. But I remember my putt just being broken just because I didn't know how to putt in that wind. So it was just learning these skills that I've never had before or never needed before. And then Texas State's, I think, was a bit more mild. And I think the course just kind of played better. It was just, I liked it more and felt like my style played better on the course. And just kind of getting used to the tour life. It was the 3rd week. Luckily, we started with, or at least I started with 3 tournaments in a row that were like 30 minutes apart. So we had pretty short travel schedules. So I got as much practice as we thought we needed. But yeah, definitely felt good to get in a groove there at Texas State's.
Cool.
No big euphoric moment with the cash hit your hand kind of thing, or was it just like proof that you belong there and that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think I played very well at all at Waco and Belton, and like ratings wise, and even like compared to the field, I was like kind of surprised that that was all it took to get 50th or 60th. So I was like, well, I can play a lot better than this. Like, I feel broken right now, and I'm still above water. Like, I'm not last. So I didn't feel all that terrible because I just felt like my game could only get better. So Texas State's, I even felt like, I can't remember if I had one bad round or just kind of average, but I felt a lot of the tour stops that I felt that I played really well. I still had at least one round where I was like, man, if I just played half decent, that would have saved me a lot on the placings. But
And then a couple of tournaments later, you played in the Dynamic Discs Open, and watching the coverage, I can only imagine that must have been the most insane tournament you've ever played in.
yeah, if Waco was the most wind I've ever experienced, DDO was twice as much wind. Like, there was no knowing where your disc was going to go. I was throwing a PD3, a Mutant, and putting with my MD5. Those were the three discs that I used. I didn't care what the hole was. I was just throwing one of those three discs and trying to stay in the fairway. Because
for just going to put in here for a sec, for our listeners who might not know what those discs are, Max is sponsored by Discmania, and those are some very overstable discs, which means that they fight the wind a little bit more than the other ones.
Yeah, don't fly as far, but you know exactly what they're going to do, or you hopefully do, if you're not playing in Emporia,
Maybe
Kansas.
not in the wind.
But I mean, yeah, if you know anything about those courses too, they're surrounded by OB. So if you're not on the fairway, you're giving up a lot of strokes. And unfortunately, I gave up a lot of strokes.
Probably not the only one.
No, I think Paul Macbeth missed the cut on that tournament as well, so I wasn't alone.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, we were in, a little aside, we were in Lethbridge that
I think it was that weekend.
or the
yeah.
weekend after, and they were also having the most wind they'd have in forever. And I know we were having some Park Pro coverage come out of that tournament where you'll see me get my ass whooped by an open course with nothing in the way because there was 70, 80 kilometer gusts going on. And so,
Jesse, spoilers, buddy. Come on. People
Can't
are going
spoil
to
live
sign
sports.
up to watch you.
can't spoil live sports. This is a debate for another night.
Actually, that tournament was kind of funny though, and you can go back and listen if to our new listeners who probably didn't listen to that episode. Go back and listen to that episode. But the practice round was particularly windy, and I think was it the first round the next day was the wind died.
Yeah, so my game plan was toast.
Yeah.
I went out there and threw Captain's Raptor off the tee on every hole, just playing for par, ready to win, and then yeah, like the practice round, I threw my like fairly fresh Sexton off the tee on a hyzer, and it cut rolled. Like it was that bad out there.
And it went like 100 feet.
Yeah, it went 225 feet probably, and then it came back at me 50 feet because I gave it enough height. That was a disgusting tournament. But yeah, from the numbers, based on my description, the tournament Max was playing in Emporia was like 30 to 40 kilometers more wind than that.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah, crazy time. Did you have a favorite tournament?
I mean, it's hard not to say Portland just because that was my highest finish. And I mean, just courses in Oregon are beautiful and amazing. Like, and especially that ball golf course, Glendoveer, that we played on. I mean, watching coverage from 2021, I wasn't too impressed just because I feel like a lot of people exploited the course design there with just throwing rollers on another fairway and just kind of breaking the hole. But I think they did an amazing job building that course how you should play a disc golf on a ball golf course. And yeah, just being on a chase card, having that the Paul Macbeth effect, seeing the fans and playing in that environment was just a real treat. Just to know that this is what it's like on the highest level.
Very cool.
I'm curious what it was like. I know you've obviously played with some really good players in Sweden, but is there anything that really stuck out to you about the difference between 1,000 to 1,010 rated, 1,020 rated players to the top of the top, getting to watch their game in person? A 1050 rated player is something that I think, unless you've watched it live, it's probably hard to comprehend. Was there anything that really stuck out to you in terms of those, top 5 players that you thought, holy cow, I've never seen anything like this, and this is the difference between where I'm at right now and where I'm trying to get to?
I mean, it's hard not to say just like consistency. Like their worst golf is better than most people's best golf. So it's just to see them be, not happy about like a great shot. They complain about a shot that worked out great, but they didn't picture it that way. So they're just nitpicking all these details that you might not even see, might not even notice. So they just have this like complete next level. And yeah, throwing far, of course. A lot of the Europeans are playing courses that aren't super huge par threes or massive par fours. It's a lot more technical, woodsy golf. And there's just a lot of Americans that just throw so much further than the average European. And the putting, I think Americans don't get enough respect for their putting. Europeans tend to be a weakness for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure why that is, but basically everybody on tour are just machines. So it's frustrating, but also motivating to just see, okay, that's what it takes. That's where you're saving 4 strokes a round. And over 3 or 4 rounds, that's a lot of strokes.
Mm-hmm. Looking ahead to this coming year, do you have a schedule? Are you going to try to hit as many tournaments as you can, or do you have some selected? Are you going back to Europe? Or
yeah, so far it's going to be very similar to last year. Playing as many Pro Tour events as possible. A little bit of an extended European swing, starting with PCS Sula, which is now an elite event, and then European Open. And I'm not sure if I'll do Åland, which is a new European tour. But I was there this summer checking out the courses, and we got the royal treatment by the guy that's owning it there, and it was an amazing experience. So I think that's going to be a game time decision. But then coming back to Sweden for national championships, which is going to be played on Ale, which was a course that was by far the best in Sweden, that was closed for 2 or 3 years with ownership issues, but somebody has revived it, and hopefully it'll be ready for a national championships. But then coming back to the US, I think for Idlewild, I think I missed two or 3 Pro Tour stops, and then from then on until the tournaments that I qualify for at the end of the year.
very cool.
Would you be mad when I said Ale Disc Golf Center?
Ale. It does hurt, but I do understand. I do understand.
Now I want to know how Weimer Garden is pronounced.
Yeah, that also hurts. You medical were done.
That's the nicest disc golf course I've played in my entire life.
It is very nice. Linus's home course, at least before they've undergone some changes. I know it's a cross-country property, so I think they've had to make a pretty substantial change. Maybe the front 9, I think. Maybe the back 9. I can't remember. But anyways, really nice property. But there's a ton of gems in Sweden, like maybe not Pro Tour quality, but just the manicured, like the level of care that they take in the property and making it as playable as possible. And it might help that it is a lot of like parkland that is previously existing and has a lot of traffic already on it. It's not just in the middle of nowhere, untouched brush like a lot of Canada is.
Mm-hmm.
They might have a head start with course design just on the land that they have available to them.
I also got the impression that they're sort of ahead of Canada, at least in with the concept of pay-to-play courses and having somebody dedicated to maintaining and making the most out of the course. Is that am I mistaken in that, or do you think there's a little bit more of a culture of that in Sweden at least and in Europe in general?
No, I think that's fair to say. I think it comes with the level of maintenance. If there are people who care enough to cut the grass bi-weekly, that's a cost. And if it is done well enough, there's definitely enough people who are willing to pay to play a nice course like that.
Yeah. Now, you finished in the Pro Tour standings. Do you know where you finished?
82nd, I think.
Yeah. For context, right between Raven Newsom and Noah Five-Ash. So certainly a respectable finish. Also finished ahead of the previous year's Pro Tour champion. Do you have a goal for the year in terms of, number of caches, finish on the Pro Tour? How do you go about setting your goal for the next year?
I think a big thing is just qualifying for those season-ending events. This year, I qualified for Green Mountain Championships just on tour points, but had to play I think it was a Tuesday qualifier for MVP. And these were the new playoff events, so it was a bit different than previous years. But so that one I had to do a one-off qualifier, and as well USDGC I had to play the Monday qualifying. So off the bat, I just want to qualify for those events without having to go through that stressful process. But I mean, I think this year is going to be a lot of fun just to see improvement. And golf is just such a great thing that improvement is very black and white, just by numbers and even just feeling. Like last year, first time playing almost every course and a lot different style than what I'm used to. So it's going to be fun to, kind of have something to compare against and see where I can improve just every tournament, because now I'll see what I did in 2022 and can directly compare 2023 to that finish.
Yeah, and it's not just the finishes. I mean, I think I would speak for most disc golfers when we can say that the more you play a course, the more you get to know it. You can go back on certain shots that you made, you felt good about, and certain shots where you made a mistake. So, do you think that is going to give you a big leap up for this coming year as well, knowing the courses a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, you make so many mistakes out there, and it'll. You want to say that you're only going to make that mistake once, but I think it's the easiest way to say that the easiest way to learn from that mistake is like, okay, I got burned. I'm not going to get burned again. So hopefully that's a trend next year.
Cool.
I find myself between tournaments sometimes just, laying in bed and thinking about a course somewhere and thinking, man, next time I got to try this disc, or I got to try this shot shape or something like that. Is that something that you're going through in the off season? Like thinking about the courses you're going to be playing this year and thinking, I think this year I'm going to go for that shot or something like that.
Yeah. And I think it's just off season, great time to add to your arsenal. You just kind of over the year, I'd be like, okay, these are things that I can add to my game where it'll make this hole or this course easier. And even just playing in the wind. Like now, hopefully, I think I've figured it out how to be a bit more effective or less self-detrimental. It's just easy things that will just save multiple strokes every round. And that just adds up so much over the course of a season.
Yeah. Being lights out from 45, 50 feet would be a nice one to add, probably.
Yeah, not many people can say that, but It would definitely help.
I don't have anything else. I don't know. You guys got anything? If everyone's wondering why Jesse's so quiet, it's because Jesse gets to talk to Max pretty much every day, I think.
Well, I've been trying to interject, so it's just not Max just giving the lecture on his life here. But yeah, I know the answer to most of these questions already.
Yeah.
How nervous were you on hole 17 at USDGC? Like, it looks on camera like the easiest shot in the world for somebody that has a competent forehand. But then you watch the best players in the world throw shot after shot into hay bales and into a lake. How difficult is that shot? I really want to know.
Yeah, coming from somebody who does pride themselves on their forehand, I didn't feel nervous at all because I knew I could execute that shot, but I missed it more times than I should have. So it is just, it's the perfect amount of like the elevation just makes the island a little shorter or the water a little closer, and just I don't know if it comes across on coverage, but there's a lot of limbs that are pretty low hanging off the tee that kind of force you or like keeps you from throwing that just spike forehand. So you still kind of have to play with angles more than you are probably comfortable with. But it is a pretty big island if you just want to play for the three. It's amazing to see how many people try to park it and how many people succeed in doing that. It's very annoying to see. But I felt like my best case scenario was like circle's edge, and then you have that half go putt where if you sail it, it's over the hay bale. If you get an unlucky reaction on the basket, it's in the water. But and it's tournament nerves. Like it's so often out there. It's like you have to take into account this is probably the most people that you've ever played in front of, and the Winthrop just experience on that property. It has an aura to it that it's just like this is legendary stuff here.
Hallowed ground.
Yeah.
And actually, I do have something I know the answer to already, but might be interesting for our listeners. When you qualified for USDGC, you were in a 4-way playoff for 2 spots, or a 5-way playoff for 2 spots?
I believe it was a 5-way for 2 spots.
5-way for 2 spots, and the playoff holes you played 1, 17, and 18 on loop?
Yeah. So we started on 1. We picked sticks to do order, and I picked the short stick, so I was first. And even before that, I shot a +1 pretty early in the day, and this year was the first year they didn't allow you to restart. Usually you can, at any point of the round, pay another entry fee and start at hole 1 again. So this year it was 1 shot, and shot a +1. I think I shot 2 double bogeys on the round, so it didn't feel too hot. I was like, that's probably not going to cut it. There was a lot of touring pros that hadn't qualified that year. I think it was 124 players total doing the Monday qualifier. But just kind of had UDisc up, watching the long drive competition. And I was like, okay, there's a lot of scores that are par, -1, -2. I was like, all right, that's probably it. And then I think it was Raven Newsom that blew up on 18. I think he was sitting
from like 2 down.
I think he was 2 down.
+4 or something crazy like that.
I think he just missed it by 1. I think he took a quad bogey and went to +2 and missed the playoff by 1 stroke.
Yeah.
From going, I mean, I don't know if there is coverage of what he actually did on 18, but I'm assuming he tried to play safe and it just went wrong going OB. I mean, it's very easy on hole 18, slopey, OB everywhere, tough green. But yeah, so then it was all of a sudden a 5-way playoff. I was like rushing to hole 1 from watching the long drive competition, barely got there in time, didn't really warm up, then had to throw first. Luckily, it was pretty windy, so I was kind of just flexing a tactic down there, and a lot of people just thought it was like super lucky, but it was kind of just my play to force something over and have it just crash into the hillside. And it was a bit more action than I expected, but I mean, at worst, I would have had a circle 2 putt. And yeah, made the putt, and I was the only one to get the birdie on hole 1, so luckily didn't have to go to 17 or 18 for the second spot. But yeah, that was a pretty
Cool.
hectic scenario just to get into the tournament.
Very cool.
And then my follow-up question, because we talked about 17, is you watched what went down after, and I can't remember how it played out, but I think the favorite there was Andrew Fish by rating and things like that. And didn't he miss the island on 17 like 3 times in a row and then just walk off?
Yeah, so 4 guys left, and I think the first guy missed the island twice before making it on. Because on 17, it's a bit weird how they do the ruling. If you miss the island, you immediately throw your second shot. It's not each person in the group throws and then you keep going. If you miss the island, you keep throwing. So you can be standing there throwing 5-6 shots in a row, just dwelling in your own despair. So I think first guy missed it at least 1 or 2 times. Second guy, I can't remember where Andrew Fish was, but all 3 guys missed the island 1 or 2 times. And the last guy only has to get a 3, only has to make the island, pitch up for his 3, parks it, or maybe like a tester putt, like a 20-footer, and cashes the putt with like looking at OB. Could have gone horribly wrong.
Yeah, I seem to remember it was like a 25-footer where it's like, dude, just lay up to the pole. You got it in the bag. Congrats. And he's like, oh, hell no. And he hits like a high chain where if he would have missed it, it was going OB for sure. And he just had to birdie for swag points.
Yeah, unreal. But
also ended up getting like last in the tournament.
I did not keep up with his.
I just remember seeing the name being like, oh, dude, he plays kind of sick. And then all his magic got used up on that hole.
Yeah. Winthrop will do it to you.
Yeah, it sure looks like it.
All right.
You want to move on to?
I think we can move on. We've been on Max a little bit for a while. I'm sure you got that water there. Probably gonna dry throat.
Yeah.
Talking so much. Why don't we shout out our sponsor, Disc Golf Park. Sponsored by Disc Golf Park. Discmania company. So got a Discmania representative in the house as well. So I'm sure you put it on those baskets a lot.
Yeah, and definitely a common one in Sweden between Latitude and Disc Golf Park. That's basically the majority of the baskets we putt on.
I don't know.
Are you looking at me because you want me to do the
Yeah,
thing?
you got to do the thing.
Okay,
man.
I
You're
gotta
the
do the
sponsor
thing.
It's your
guy.
time to shine.
Yeah, so big thanks to Disc Golf Park for sponsoring this episode and every episode we have had so far. They make course equipment of the highest quality. They got baskets coming out of the Czech Republic. They catch super well, and they look great on any course with those bright blue bands. They do look pretty spiffy, you got to say. They are awesome because they are available in Canada from Canada. There's no extra duties shipping anything if you want to do a course well and cost effectively. And on top of that, they've got course designers stationed in every part of the country. We've got Clayton here in BC. We've got Maddie servicing the Rocky Mountains in Alberta. We've got Jeff and Kara doing the thing with Chainlink in Ontario, and Ben Smith doing the thing in the Maritimes. You can check them out at discgolfpark.com, I believe, or good old Google search will do it for you.
Yep. This episode is also brought to you by our patrons from patreon.com/parkpro. If you guys are watching on YouTube, you see some fancy mics. That was not brought to you by the patrons because we only have like 3 of them. But they still need to get paid for. So become a patron today. Patreon.com/parkpro. I think it's time to get into
What's
some
up,
news.
Greg?
What's that?
Sorry, just had to say what's up,
Shout
Greg.
out the Patreon.
Yeah, Greg.
He told me
Shout
he's
out
still
Greg.
listening.
Yeah,
He
perfect.
shouted us out. So, what's up, Greg?
Perfect. After we recorded our podcast, I was just about to upload it, and then I saw news that a certain player from MVP was signed, and his name was James Conrad. Signed a 4-year extension. That's big. Obviously, an even bigger move was Simon Lizotte moving to MVP from Discmania. If you
What?
are in, if you are in tune with the disc golf world, that's all you all know that that happened. Discraft signs a number of people. They new players on their team. Holland Hanley. We got Valerie Mandujano and Anthony Barella. So those are their 3 big fish, and they also re-upped with a few other guys. But they are coming in big with maybe one of the more competitive manufacturer teams this year. Also, Madison Walker re-upped with MVP. Some other big ones here. Linus Karlsson, we're just talking about him, signed a 5-year extension with Latitude 64. So that's a huge one. Paige Shue ends up with Discraft, Jake Mon, Discraft, and Natalie Ryan re-ups with Neptune Disc for 5 years. So those are still some signings going on. I don't know if that might be it for the season. Season's only a couple weeks away now. So
Yeah,
Max, you don't have an announcement for us today, do you, Max?
I do not have any news. Still pending.
All right.
But you guys will be the first to hear.
all right.
Is there anything super noteworthy we didn't spitball last time? I mean, yeah, Discraft probably has the deepest team in disc golf now. If I had to put my money on it, re-upping with Brody for those sweet zone sales. Aaron Gossage, obviously, breakout year with his World's Performance, worth talking to. Corey Ellis, also probably, I don't want to call him a tier 2 player. He's a tier 1 player, but maybe one of the guys that's not in the spotlight that has the most value with tournament finishes. So good pick up those guys.
Yeah, I think he went up. Him and Brody Smith also got promoted to him. Well, actually, Aaron Gossage as well. They all got promoted to their elite team as well. So they moved up a sort of a tier. As far as I'm assuming it has to do with like the payment, and
For sure.
they get the Tour Series
Tour Series
disc. So, that makes a huge difference for their touring effort.
Yeah, totally. And we talked about the guys that got cut from the elite team to make space for those guys last time. So check out the last episode if you want to hear about that. Yeah, AB probably being like the biggest prospect that was picked up across the offseason.
Yeah, he's one of the first to announce publicly that he was leaving his company. So, yeah, that's a big fish to.
Other storylines maybe being like Paige Shue coming back after not really playing much. That's a world champion that was kind of on the sidelines for a while there. I know she was living life. She had and Grady had a kid, and yeah, like
I'm sure
Good
that takes
excuse.
up a lot of your
doing
time.
life
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
I just saw that they are taking over Ezra's old RV.
Yeah.
So they'll be on the road for sure. I'm guessing, or I just saw Tristan Tanner put his van up for sale as well. So I'm sure Ezra and Tristan will be doing maybe more of an Airbnb situation
Style, probably, yeah.
because they're pretty tight.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely going to be weird to see Ezra's RV out there and not have Ezra in it.
Yeah, I bet.
Absolutely. We're talking Natalie Ryan, uncertain future with the PDGA rule change. Neptune Discs must have some faith that she'll be out there, whether she's on that pro tour or not, doing good stuff at disc golf to justify a 5-year extension.
Yeah, it's not a small that's not a small commitment. That's a pretty long commitment for someone who may not be able to play a disc golf pro tour event again.
Yeah.
So all A tiers for Natalie. Who knows what goes on there? But.
I've heard there's been some, talks about a lawsuit that could be in the works that, who knows, maybe the year after or in the future, something will change that makes her eligible
it's
again.
Not to say it's not written in stone, so
you never know.
It's written on a piece of paper and signed by a bunch of people.
On a disc in somebody's basement.
Yeah, anything else on these signings, guys?
Well, did we talk about the actual Simon contract?
No, we did not.
That's kind of important.
Yeah.
10 years, 10 million, same as the Macbeth deal there. Did they give this?
Allegedly. Nothing's
Oh, this is an
confirmed.
alleged?
It's all
Yeah,
leaked.
I mean, I didn't know that it was leaked to begin with. I heard the numbers and I just assumed that was part of the plan. But apparently that wasn't supposed to be public knowledge.
No.
Mm.
And a lot of very precise numbers to
Yeah.
think
For a
that
leak.
somebody who did know everything and shouldn't have said anything said something.
Yeah, that's unless they're just made like in the case that it's fake, it's probably someone shadowing something off Macbeth because they think of
And I mean,
something similar.
nobody's double taking on those numbers. Most people would have assumed that it was a Paul Macbeth deal.
Yeah, and MVP hasn't come out and said it's not true.
No.
And even Paul himself made an Instagram post of him and Simon through the years while they were grinding it out and kind of doing the no surprise, you're up here with me, buddy, kind of thing. So I think we can take it as mostly true.
Yeah.
10 years, 10 million, 6-figure signing bonus.
Yep.
I don't think they gave us the actual number on that one.
No.
They paid $1 million to Discmania for the buyout?
At least. I think they just said 7-figure buyout. So at least $1 million to Discmania.
And uncapped potential earnings for Simon on merchandise and disc sales.
And a signature line that will be happening in the future. I'm not sure how soon, but
yeah.
And it better be called the Simon line.
I think that
I'm
has
going
to
to
be
quit the
locked in.
podcast. if they
It
don't call
only
the
makes
Simon line.
sense.
It makes
right?
sense, but MVP's got like a bunch of science names.
Yeah, but I mean, you could just call it the Simon line, and then all the disc names.
And then the other stuff underneath.
I'm curious, Max, to hear your feedback on this. Obviously, to the press, most of these contracts are not public knowledge in terms of dollars or even terms necessarily. How much are the players on the tour talking to each other? Not just the top 5 contracts that we know, but just sort of for the other 100 players that are out there all the time. How much discussion is there amongst pros about, hey, this is what my company is giving me this year, and how does that play out between players?
I mean, I'm not sure if we're supposed to, so we might have to cut this out. But I mean, there's definitely talk between players. Like you're not living together and not know. I mean, we're probably not saying exactly what our contract says, but most people have a pretty good idea of who's making what. And obviously it depends on what your circle is, who's hanging out with who. A lot of people will keep to themselves and do their own thing, so people might just have no idea. But for the most part, a lot of people are pretty buddy-buddy. And I mean, I think it's only good for the players to know what they're worth. And I think disc golf is trending towards that, where it is only a benefit for the players. And you can understand why the manufacturers want to keep that under wraps. But I think it's only good for the players, for knowing what you're worth and being able to leverage and negotiate contracts.
Yeah, it's one thing to know what another player is making. It's another thing to take that information and give it to someone else to put it out there.
Yeah. No, I think most people are pretty good with not spreading, like not leaking it. But obviously there's enough people who are leaking where you see this and it's like somebody who shouldn't have said something, because I'm sure both sides of this deal didn't want that to come out. And yeah, disc golf's still fresh. They're still getting used to this business side of it. And I think things will tighten up with NDAs and even just people taking it more seriously, maybe more serious repercussions. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they do find out who leaked it, if there is some kind of repercussion for them.
Totally. Because from what I gather, just from reading the Alti World article that they had on it, where a lot of the information kind of got leaked too, it was multiple sources, but confirmed sources from MVP and from Discmania as well.
Yep.
So, it's interesting how this stuff gets out. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. It'd be interesting to see how it goes in the future too. Who knows next offseason?
I want to keep talking about this. You're looking at me to change the topic, but I'm not.
I'm looking for your input on this.
This is
I'm
big
looking
time.
to
Like,
get your input.
this is the biggest since Paul Macbeth.
I
Like,
almost named this episode the Simon episode.
I mean, rightfully so.
I'm not Simon necessarily, but like right now and in the past, the only negotiation tactic you had as a pro disc golfer was what your friends were telling you. Oh, I won the same amount of tournaments as my buddy Johnny here, and he gets a box of discs and a corn dog subscription. So then, when you walk up to the plate after you've won a couple more tournaments than Johnny's, I want my box of discs and I want my corn dog subscription upgraded to hamburgers or whatever, So that's the only way you knew what your value was. But when you're saying like NDAs and leaking and things, I think you're probably, and it might be in the more distant future, going to get to a place where you have like a players association, like a lot of other major sports, and contracts might actually be public knowledge. Like, any other major sport, these things are published and tracked. And with the amount of agents and things that are jumping into the game, sports management companies and whatnot, I think it's only trending in that direction, where it doesn't have to be word of mouth to know what your value is just because somebody else got, a contract of XYZ value.
I will also interject a couple of things. First of all, I'm not a lawyer, and this is not legal advice, and Parked Pro is not liable for giving legal advice. But I'm fairly certain that neither in Canada nor the United States is it illegal to discuss your salary. Obviously, you can have confidentiality agreements about aspects of the company, things like that. Disc molds, whatever. But I believe it is legal in both countries to discuss your salary, and an employer can't prevent you from discussing your salary.
Yeah, it might be one of your workers' rights, actually, to be able to discuss this.
100%. So don't worry about it, Max. You're cool. But I'm not a lawyer. The other thing is...
getting, boy? Spit it out.
As much as, we talk about, the Discraft team and the Innova team and things like that, I mean, it's not a team sport. Disc golf is not a team sport. And all of these contracts are marketing agreements. I mean, the disc golfers are paid to be
They're endorsed
promotional employees, essentially. They're a marketing team. So I think when you talk about, maybe in the future we'll know what everybody's salaries are like we do in other pro sports. I don't know if we'll ever get there because, I'm not sure it's great for the manufacturers to have all that information out there, and they can sort of lean on all the players like they're doing currently and saying, we'd really prefer if you didn't discuss this. But yeah, there's never going to be a salary cap or anything like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if, a lot of the secrecy does continue, unless it's really going to take all the players to say, hey, we've had enough of this. We're all open to talking about our compensation.
I could see it going a different way too, where, Simon obviously talked to a number of players to get their opinion on the contract. And I'm not saying that's where things leaked out, but I feel like players are just going to get more tight-lipped about who they talk to about these kinds of things.
For sure.
Yeah, I feel like you're not going to be, he probably, Simon in the future, if this was to ever happen again, he might talk to Eagle, and that's it. One of the closest friends on tour, that might be it. But yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Let's see how it plays out.
Well, I think, obviously it was pretty well documented that Kona Montgomery, or Panis, requested her salary based on what Kristen Tatar had recently signed for. So you could see it has had an immediate impact on the salaries of other players. And yeah, I imagine that Simon, in a world where Paul Macbeth and Ricky Wysocki didn't announce that they were making $1 million a year, does Simon get approached by another manufacturer and offered enough that he decides to leave Discmania? Who knows?
Well, I'm going to keep playing counterpoints because I do think you're right. The publicly posted salary thing is probably a little bit far-fetched for this. But if you do take it at a raw, sales perspective, if you're a marketing person and essentially a salesperson, you will probably know what your numbers are based, at the very least, on what you're getting a kickback on your discs are, right? If I know I'm getting $2.25 per disc, that's very easy math to know what your sales are worth. And then you can approach other companies in that very same way. Mm-hmm. So to say you need a Macbeth contract, maybe his was the watershed moment that showed that that's how much the contract is worth. But now I think if they can say, okay, Macbeth sold 4 million Zeuses at $1 each and he got XYZ worth of money, then it's not so far-fetched for Simon to come up with those numbers now that at least that first contract's been established.
I think it's nothing to scoff at as well, how much money they paid Discmania to get him out of that deal, because he wasn't even up for a contract renewal. This was, I think, at least next year. But
he had a year left,
He signed last year, I think.
Okay.
Re-signed last year.
Yeah, he was there for a while, but I heard the contract had a buyout clause in it.
Yeah. But, I mean, for somebody to actually pay that, and for us to know how much money that is, that's unprecedented. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think Ricky was the last one to break his contract to get out of it.
Maybe that had a buyout clause.
I don't know if it had a buyout clause because it seemed like there was legal talk around it,
Yeah.
I think it would have been a cleaner break if both sides were...
Yeah, if they're like, oh, you paid the number on the sheet, I'm mad about it, but give me your nickels and take the guy out of here.
And I wonder
it's also...
Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead. I was going to say, it's also kind of offensive if I'm Simon Lizotte and I'm getting paid. Well, Discmania gets paid $1 million, let's say, to break my contract, and I'm not getting paid $1 million a year. I find that kind of offensive. That, oh, well, obviously he's worth at least $1 million a year to Discmania, if that's what the buyout clause is, but he was probably not getting paid $1 million a year.
I don't know how offensive it is. Like, as an employee or something, like, you are there to make money for the company, right? I'm worth more to my company than my salary is, as is Andre. And have you started work again?
What do you think I'm doing right now?
Okay, because you're definitely worth a lot more than we pay you. You know, so I can see the buyout being worth more. It'll be worth Simon's salary plus his profits, and maybe inconvenience to find someone to fill that space. I don't know.
Yeah, like that's the thing is like, do you think Discmania makes $1 million over the next 3 years off of Lizotte if they kept him?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think that's a very easy buffer to break.
Yeah, I think Sky Gods and Mindbenders,
you're right.
they make that much money in a year.
I was gonna. You're definitely right, because the next thing I was gonna say is, do you think MVP has already paid his signing bonus and and his buyout with the disc that they sold them the last week?
Probably not, but it won't take long.
No.
I think they're laughing in a year or two.
That's the other thing. They don't have to turn a profit on them in year one on a 10-year deal. They don't have to turn a profit on year two. I think they might get enough money out of these Lozotl or whatever we're going to call the signature hexes and stuff to, you know, soften the blow a little bit and make it not so hard on the chin. But they might be looking at this as profits coming from that Simon disc line that's coming down.
Just think of the Paul McBeth signing and the state of Discraft before Paul McBeth. I mean, it was still a big company, but it wasn't anywhere near what Discraft is today. Like, now, everybody wants to throw Discraft. Before, it was everybody wanted to throw Innova, and it's the Paul McBeth effect. And I think Lizotte is the only one that has that same pull, and I wouldn't be surprised if MVP becomes a powerhouse in the next few years, where they're picking up more and more top level players that they can only do because they signed Simon Lizotte. Like, it's just the start of a trend in my eyes.
Oh, totally. I agree. One, I think Simon's worth more than Rick. No offense, Rick, as like the powerhouse guys. And what I heard from like a actually fairly reliable unnamed source is that Discraft was making significantly more money selling only Ultra Stars than the entire disc golf division combined the year before. No, I'm not kidding. Before
Wow.
they signed Paul. They were also like the official ultimate disc of the
I was gonna
ultimate.
say,
Pro
If
League.
you're playing
thrown an
Ultimate,
Ultra
You're throwing an Ultra Star.
They're pretty sweet when you play Ultimate.
They make a great lid.
They are the ultimate disc. I won't throw.
But that's something to say. Like, one catch frisbee that's a standard piece of sporting equipment, it's like selling basketballs or hockey pucks to a fairly niche sport, was making more money than a disc lineup that, when you do all the plastic combinations and all the like the work they're putting in to produce probably 100 discs, the effort to do the art, the plastic blends, the molding, the everything, and it wasn't scratching Ultra Stars.
Yeah.
Now Paul McBeth is the Ultra Star of Discraft.
Yeah.
And we literally just talked about how they probably have the most competitive team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's in how many years?
Yeah.
4? 3?
Exactly.
4?
3, 4. I don't
Something
know.
like that.
But look out, MVP in 3 or 4 years.
On that note, this is something that I find fascinating is Simon has a very, very passionate fan base. MVP has a very passionate fan base as well.
Yeah.
So that's, to me, we kind of touched on it last episode. It's match made in heaven. I don't know. It's like, what, are they going to be super fans now? I don't know.
Well, also, like, I'm really curious to see what happens to the MVP disc market, because really, aside from like the original Ions and stuff like that were like the first ones out of production, there's not a ton of crazy expensive MVP plastic out there. You can have pretty much anything you want from the lineup, save like a watermelon disc from a decade ago. And if you want to buy like a Sky God 1 that's fresh, shell out a car payment.
Yeah.
Like the resale market in MVP in the next 4 years is going to go nutso. And that's, again, just the same thing. Super fans, like two cults meeting each other. The Envy Boy MVP cult and the Simon fanboys colliding at one. Get ready for like $400 volts now.
Yeah. Crazy.
I don't know. I feel like part of the reason why they had that resale value for the Discmania disc was because they just weren't printing enough discs. Like when
we can get into the
when Innova
market
finally made
manipulation,
enough
speculation, whenever you want. Because I think there's like the pedigree that Discmania wants to put themselves out as, so they like artificially create demand by putting out less discs sometimes. But that's total speculation on my part.
No, I mean, it's fair.
That was probably true.
They've hurt in the manufacturing department, but I mean, just with his YouTube following, you know that there's just going to be that many people wanting every Simon Lizotte disc from MVP.
Yeah.
Yep, from day one.
Anything else on Simon?
Good for him.
Yeah.
For him.
Oh,
Really
I guess
good
we can say
Canadian
one
boy.
thing since we're talking. Yeah, good Canadian boy. Good Vancouver boy. Simon's in the back, not vibing with the MVP distance drivers. And I know there is that new 12-speed coming out with the Gyro X tech and all that kind of stuff. I want to say it's called the Beam. Am I crazy?
Yeah.
The Destroyer clone? That could also be like a big thing. Because I know for myself, like I tried an all MVP bag for something to do for a month. And I wasn't really jiving with the distance drivers either. So if you can like really tighten up that part of the lineup with a new release that has Simon's name on it, that could rocket that disc to the top.
Well, and like a lot of people speculate that it's, it potentially something to do with the overmold, but Simon's not limited to the overmold. He's allowed to throw streamline. So if they make a mold that is a sort of, destroyer clone, they could make it in that streamline plastic and avoid the, whatever the uncomfortable feeling is about the
potential overmold.
And I mean, I think I haven't thrown many MVP in my day, but I think just their distance drivers tend to be that just crazy wide, like 13, 14 speeds. They don't have a lot of 12 speed like that standard.
I don't think they
distance
have
driver
a 12 speed in the whole lineup.
Yeah.
Because the closest thing that James is throwing is the Photon, which is an 11 speed disc, kind of like a Wraith, maybe a little more like a slower destroyer. Wraith might be a little more understable than like a overstable Photon. But yeah, there's nothing in that destroyer class in the whole lineup. And that's like the staple of most pro bags. So.
I've got a Relativity, and it goes as far as any other driver that I own, and I don't throw it because I don't like the feeling. So I totally understand.
And even like on the streamline end of things, they've got the Trace, which again, it's kind of Wraithy. It's another 11 speed solo molded. Sarah Holcomb's throwing it, but there is nothing that would be his PD2 DD3 replacement.
I think this is a 13.
Oh, we're busting out the
Mayhem.
The Mayhem.
Definitely just feels wider. Like definitely a 13 off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Same
like if
reason
they
I
can,
don't throw a nuke. Those really wide drivers are weird, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they just need Ezra on MVP to pump out all these 13, 14 speeds instead of his nukes. Yeah, there's something about that that's just not my favorite. But I also have very short fingers, so I'm not the guy for wide rim drivers.
On YouTube, we have a Mayhem here, 13 speed. I think this is actually my first driver.
Wow.
Ever? You're so young, I love it.
It's pristine.
And it's a giveaway when we reach how many subscribers, Andre?
Yeah.
Yes, this emotional piece of Andre's disc golf history we're going to give
Well
away.
How
said.
many do we have? We can put it up 500 because I don't mind giving it away. I don't throw for a reason. So, all right. I think we can move on. Back by popular demand. All the fans are asking for this segment. It's a sort of pseudo debatey type deal here. For those that aren't aware, I assign you guys a position. You are forced to argue for that position on a certain topic. And today we have 3 people arguing this. So I came up with a little scenario here, and here it is. This is sort of relevant as well. So, Lone Star Discs. This is a hypothetical. This is not breaking news or anything. Lone Star Discs signs Simon Lizotte, Paul Macbeth, and Kristen Tatar to identical $1 million per season for 10-year deals. Who has the most impact on the brand over the course of the contract? Max, you are taking the stance of Paul Macbeth. Jesse, you are taking the stance of Kristen Tatar. And starting us off is Matt, you are taking the position of Simon Lizotte. I'm going to get my timing here. You each have 1 minute to make your argument. And Matt, you are on the clock starting now.
All right. Well, I believe he is currently, disc sales aside, the highest paid disc golfer on the planet right now. He has goodwill. He has a YouTube channel that he manages and runs himself. He's the most popular player on the planet right now in disc golf. He's fun. He's everything that you want in a disc golfer. He's the everyman that can do the extraordinary. And I think if you put some Texas plastic in his hands, people would think he was from Texas. So obviously, Simon Lizotte is going to have the biggest impact signing this brand new deal with Lone Star. Case closed.
All right, 20 seconds on the clock. He is ceding those 20 seconds. Once again, confident. Like confident.
And he's not a short guy, Jesse. He's not a short guy.
All right. Speaking of short guys, Max, you are coming up next with Paul Macbeth. If you didn't listen to the last episode, go ahead and do that for a very vivid description of Paul Macbeth's height.
5'8".
All right. You are on the clock with Macbeth.
All right. Well, you have to take the legacy into account. 6-time world champion. I mean, arguably one of, if not the most dominant MPO player of all time. Has a significant following. Obviously, if anybody knows disc golf, they know Paul Macbeth. He's synonymous with the sport. Biggest name. And he is very impactful internationally as well. If not just his name, but now he's got the Paul Macbeth Foundation building courses in countries that's never seen disc golf. So if all these people are getting introduced to the sport that way, then they get Lone Star discs rather than anything else. So that's all they know. And committing a lot to the European tour this year, he's just growing his brand more than any other American player.
All right. That was Max on Paul Macbeth. Next up, we have Jesse with Kristen Tatar, and your time starts now.
Yeah, in the case of Kristen, you can take everything Max just said about international and apply it to Kristen, because after Paul puts the disc in their hand or introduces them to it, they're going to follow someone closer to them. Like all of Europe is going to cheer for Kristen. They can have 10 different people they could possibly cheer for on the MPO side, but Kristen is the dominant European female and probably the most dominant European player for their division. Europe being the fastest growing disc golf market in the world, we're talking about a 10-year span here. We're not talking about tomorrow. So long term, I think Kristen will continue to be dominant. She's young and she is the best player. And she will be the one that's representing the places that have the most growth. The established markets here are already chopped up by your 15 favorite players. But I think she'll really lead the charge into the next decade. And you can have my last 9 seconds.
All right, there we go. Some good arguments to be made there by all parties. And just gonna take a sip of water.
Suspenseful.
Excuse me. So, verdict is, just gonna put that in.
Well, some for the YouTube.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
All right. You guys all brought up some good points. Recency bias makes me tempted to go with the Lizotte argument, and obviously Paul Macbeth has been the most notable player in the world for the last decade-ish plus. But I think Jesse takes it. He just brought up all the points. He brought up some really good points. I probably gave him the toughest stance on this because of what I just brought up, Paul Macbeth being the probably most well-known MPO player and Simon Lizotte with the popularity that he has and the recency bias. But A lot of really good points brought up by Jesse. She's not that young, though.
I was going to say.
I'd say she's got a good 10-year career where she can continue to be dominant, unless there is some like young gun that comes on and really blows up the scene.
I think she has the least competition. Like Paul and Lizotte, they might be one top 3, top 4 in the world, but they're still competing against each other. Kristen is undoubtedly number 1 in the world right now, and might be for the next 3, 4, 5. Who knows?
Yeah,
She could just go on a run and be the next Palmer Beth, the next Ken Klima.
That's kind of my point that I rushed through, is that if you surveyed 1,000 disc golfers who their favorite MPO player was, and you picked them geographically so it was well represented across the world, you'll probably get 15 different answers, with the majority being a split of like these top 5 type people. When you ask about that same question in FPO, there's a lot of people that love Paige. There's a lot of people that love Kristen. But I think it drops off significantly under that. So that there's more of the pie to be split Kristen's way than in the MPO direction. And I also do believe like Europe, Finland, like we talked about, super established, Sweden, whichever, but like Western Europe is starting to catch on, and Central Europe is starting to catch on a lot. And I think that they have the structure in those countries already with good park space, established whatever, that those are the places that are going to be the next 10 to 15 years of disc golf, more than just the United States and Finland doubling down on what they already have.
Yeah. I mean, Lizotte does have that YouTube factor where he doesn't even have to be on the tour. He doesn't have to be competing, and he'll still be pumping your product like nobody else. And like maybe Brody and Ezra are somewhere in that realm, but Lizotte, I think, has the biggest impact off the course.
Oh, absolutely. Even if like when you Google best disc golf shots, it's like it's Simon highlight reel. Yeah. He doesn't miss one of those compilation videos. Yeah. His name is attached to absolutely everything.
One of the other interesting things on Kristen Tatar is that she actually beat out Simon for the most liked player on a recent survey put out by Ulti-World. That was put out before the steal, so who knows what that would be now. But
so wasn't it Kristen, Simon, and then Sexton?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to Papa.
I was trying to Google it before the segment, but I didn't have enough time. I knew they were both up there 1-2.
Yeah.
Also, Kristen Tatar made a lot of people care about Latitude 64 discs in a market that maybe had been a little bit cool on Latitude 64 discs.
For sure.
So it's not like, she had joined a very popular brand and they rode that wave together. She put Latitude 64's name on the map last year. In a big way.
Really, like Emerson probably had the next biggest impact for Latitude when he came very close to winning Worlds. But other than that, like
it's really just the Europeans.
It's Ricky before that.
Yeah.
And then it's Europeans, like you said, they've been carrying that company for.
But they don't have that star. And Kristen is obviously the best in the world, so that's helps with your star power on the FPO side.
All right, I think that about does it for the episode today. Max, you got anything you want to say to the 3 Americans that we got listening and the 30 Canadians we have listening?
Hi, Mom. No, I mean, I'm just
31
glad to be here. It's about time.
Yeah.
I don't know how much more you're putting into this recently, but hopefully I can come back for another one.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're in town, I think that seat's yours if you want it.
Warm it up.
We could have the once per quarter check-in while you're on tour.
Yeah.
Call, see how things are going.
Totally.
I've got a million questions about why people don't call footfalls on jump putts, so we'll be happy to have you on anytime.
I got some insider on that.
All right. Stay tuned.
Teaser.
For that one. You're going to have to listen to the next Max episode for that. We're just going to keep teasing it every single
episode. Find out why no one calls jump putts. Next, Max couldn't talk. Find out next week. It's the week after.
Oh, sorry, we didn't get to it. All right. Thanks for listening. Remember to check out our Patreon Patreon.com/parkpro. It goes a long ways. For as little as $1.50, I think it is, per month. Yeah, got to help pay for these mics and cameras and stuff. So,
Please.
yeah, please. All right, Matt, take us out.
From all of us here at Park Pro, you can't play disc golf on the moon without getting there.
Love it.
Nailed it again.
Nailed it.